I will be going over Napoleon's major European battles that brought sweeping changes to Europe by using the game Napoleon Total War to provide visuals, as it has historically accurate depictions of both the battlefields and the soldiers. Let's start off with a cutscene that transitions us nicely to France in 1805, right after Napoleon was proclaimed emperor.
France was aflame. Napoleon gave France greatness. He gave France everything: glory, justice, and law. Nothing was untouched. His code made justice a reality for all. I watched the emperor at work. He was a force of nature, a storm blowing away the cobwebs. The old enemies plotted against him: Britain, Austria, Russia, and their lickspittles. Napoleon was to be removed and his flame extinguished. We worked to stop them. In 1805, all of France, his empire, prepared for war.
It can be argued that the Battle of Austerlitz was Napoleon's greatest victory ever. Also known as the Battle of Three Emperors, due to the presence of Napoleon, Francis II, and Alexander I, French victory in this battle effectively crushed the Third Coalition. On December 2nd, 1805, Napoleon defeated a Russo-Austrian army after nearly 9 hours of difficult fighting. By the end of the battle, the French had a total of about 1,300 dead and 7,000 wounded, while the Russo-Austrian army had 15,000 dead and wounded, along with 12,000 of their soldiers being captured. "24 days after the battle, the Treaty of Pressburg was signed. This treaty reinforced the earlier treaties of Campo Formio and Luneville, and made Austria cede lands to both Bavaria and Italy. This victory also allowed the creation of the Confederation of the Rhine, which was a collection of German states intended as a buffer zone between France and Central Europe. This also put the nail into the coffin of the Holy Roman Empire, effectively ending it forever. It's not hard to see why this is considered Napoleon's greatest victory. The Battle of Borodino, fought on September 7th, 1812, was the largest and bloodiest day of the Napoleonic Wars, involving more than 250,000 soldiers and resulting in at least 70,000 casualties. The Grand Armée under Napoleon attacked the Imperial Russian army of General Mikhail Kutuzov and eventually captured the main positions on the battlefield, but failed to destroy the Russian army despite heavy losses. About a third of Napoleon's soldiers were killed or wounded in this battle, which led to a result of a Pyrrhic victory, which means that the victor endured so many casualties that it can be hardly considered even a victory. The Russians, however, were able to replace all of their losses with their vast numbers of militia. The Battle of Borodino was a pivotal point in the campaign, as it was the last offensive action fought by Napoleon in Russia. By withdrawing, the Russian army preserved its combat strength and eventually drove Napoleon out of their country. The Battle of Dresden was fought on the 26th to the 27th of August, 1813, around Dresden, in present-day eastern Germany, resulting in a French victory against the forces of the 6th Coalition of Austrians, Russians, and Prussians, all under the command of Field Marshal Schwarzenberg. Initially, the Allied forces avoided direct confrontation with Napoleon and instead attacked his subordinate commanders, which was part of their Trochenberg plan. However, when Schwarzenberg attacked Marshal St. Cyr, who had been ordered to fortify Dresden, Napoleon arrived quickly and unexpectedly with reinforcements to repel his assault. Although being outnumbered almost 2-1, with the French fielding 135,000 soldiers in comparison to the 214,000 fielded by the Allies, Napoleon decided to attack and won an impressive tactical victory. By the end of the battle, the French had 10,000 casualties, in comparison with the Allies who had 38,000 dead, wounded, or captured. A big chunk of the Allied losses can be contributed to the cavalry commander Marshal Joachim Murat, who was able to capture 13,000 men during a rainstorm. Unfortunately, Napoleon had to leave the battlefield due to a sudden fit of gastric spasma, which allowed Schwarzenberg to escape. Despite many successes in Germany, the numbers continued to mount against Napoleon, and the French army was pinned down by a force twice its size and lost at the Battle of Leipzig. Napoleon withdrew back to France after the costly defeat and was forced to abdicate on April 11, 1814 as part of the Treaty of Fontainebleau, which also exiled him to Elba.
He stayed 10 months. In spring 1815, Napoleon came home. He had no choice but to march on Paris. The worthless Bourbon king fled. Destiny awoke. Europe turned against us. Napoleon was an enemy and disturber of the tranquility of the world. War was forced on us. The Emperor made his plans. Go north, destroy the British and the Prussians separately before they could meet. It would work. It had to work.
When Napoleon returned to power during his 100 days, his goal was to drive a wedge between the incoming British and Prussian armies in Belgium. His first target was the Prussians at Ligny. The Battle of Ligny took place on June 16, 1815, and was the last victory of Napoleon's military career. Field Marshal Gebhard von Blücher commanded the Prussian army of 84,000, while Napoleon had 68,000 soldiers. The Battle of Ligny is a prime example of a tactical win and a strategic loss, as the bulk of the Prussian army survived and went on to play a pivotal role 2 days later at the Battle of Waterloo.
The British made their stands on the Brussels road, Waterloo. French cannons and bayonets would carry the day. Then it began to rain. Napoleon had wanted dry ground. He could not maneuver his artillery in the mud. On that June morning, Napoleon spoke to us. This day will decide the destiny of Europe. This day is everything. If we lose, we have nothing. Once again, the cannons would speak.
The Battle of Waterloo was fought on June 18, 1815 in present-day Belgium. Napoleon was defeated by the armies of the 7th Coalition, comprising of the Anglo-Allied army under the Duke of Wellington, combined with the Prussian army under the command of Gebhard von Blücher. It was the culminating battle of the Waterloo campaign, and Napoleon's last. The defeat at Waterloo ended his rule as emperor, which marked the end of his 100 days return from exile. Napoleon delayed giving battle until June 18th to allow the ground to dry after a pretty bad rainstorm, as he couldn't move his cannons in the mud. Wellington's army, in a very defensible position, withstood repeated attacks by the French until the Prussians arrived in force and broke through Napoleon's right flank. The French army was then driven from the field. Pursuing coalition forces then entered France and restored King Louis XVIII to the French throne. Napoleon abdicated, surrendered to the British, and was exiled to St. Helena, where he died in 1821. Although the Little Corporal, as he was nicknamed, was eventually defeated, he changed the world with his innovative new military tactics and political policies. He was beyond doubt one of the greatest military leaders of all time, as he dominated his time so completely that European history between 1800 and 1815 is commonly described as the Napoleonic Era. Along with his Napoleonic Code, Napoleon promoted the growth of the modern state through his administrative and legal reforms, and his changes in the map of Europe stimulated movements for national unification. Napoleon had a very large impact on history, despite being a very little man.